Hi, I'm Mandeep Rai, author of The Wheel of Destiny. You're watching me on Balle Bolly, AuthorSpace. My early life was spent in various cantonments where my father, Colonel Amar Singh Rai, was posted at various stages of his career. In 1962, I joined YPS Patiala and was fortunate to win the Yadvadra Gold Medal for the Best All-Round Boy of 1965. Because I was very good in maths, circumstances propelled me to appear for the IIT exam in May 1966, and I was selected for chemical engineering in IIT Bombay. There I wrote my first novelette, and that convinced me that I wanted to be a creative writer. The dichotomy of pursuing chemical engineering and wanting to become a creative writer soon came to a head, and in 1968 I left IIT Bombay, much to the bitter disappointment of my parents. I then pursued English literature in Government College, Chandigarh. My father convinced me that I must appear for the civil services exam, because if I want to be a creative writer, it will take me 20 years to get published. Actually, thereafter it took me 28 years when my third novel, In the Shadow of the Pines, was published in 1996 by UBSPD. I think that is a natural expression of the soul. It is very difficult to analyze why I was drawn to creative writing, but there is a natural ability to face one's ego and personality when creating a scene, and that helps me especially in writing historical fiction. World War I, or what is called the Great War, is dubbed as the most complex event in the history of mankind. And it was my research into the Second World War which drew me towards the First World War, because the Second World War is a natural outcome of the First World War. And when I started pursuing this, it was a very difficult thing to do, because there's not much material available regarding the Great War. So I then started with the figure 0 and identified the various characters. The canvas is very large, and one of the characters I identified was Winston Churchill, who was First Lord of the Admiralty from 1911 to 1914. Now, while pursuing this, I had to be very clear that which characters I will pursue, what is the genesis of the First World War, what was the political fabric of Europe, and in particular I had to study the alliances and the reinsurance treaty. Bismarck united the various principalities, states, kingdoms of Germany. There were 25 different entities which he brought together in the unification of Germany in 1871, and that was a masterstroke of his. But what happened thereafter? He crushed the liberals, and the German state became very hard, and the reinsurance treaty was what was holding Germany together with Russia, and there was peace in Europe. But in 1890, the Kaiser, the young Kaiser, he came out of the treaty, he discarded it, and he was told that this treaty protects Russia more than it protects Germany. And there the root cause of the First World War was laid. But the most important thing was the military planning. The German generals were convinced that they had to conquer France first, and they had to conquer it in 40 days, because their estimate was that the Russian army will take 6 weeks to mobilize. So the plan was the Schlieffen Plan, the great memorandum which they made. The plan was that they would encircle Paris in a great wheeling movement through Belgium, and Paris would be encircled from the right. It was this great wheeling movement which made them bypass the impregnable fortresses along the border between France and Germany. I have 4 published novels. The first one was When the Vulture Descends. Now this was completed in 1986 but published last in 2003. In the Shadow of the Pines was my first published book. It is the story of Lord Dalhousie's tenure in India. And I wrote it through the eyes of an architect who's developing hill stations in Simla and Kasauli. Now, it was Lord Dalhousie's dream to build an urban-based society in India. And he came to India at that stage where the emphasis shifted from conquest to the building up of his society. How I was drawn to historical fiction was a natural process because of the subject. The subject was so vast, setting up of an urban-based society and development of Simla and Kasauli as hill stations, that I had to go into the historical part. My other book, No Friends, No Enemies, is also a work of historical fiction where there are four major real-life characters: General Charles de Gaulle, Harold Macmillan, Nikita Khrushchev, and JFK. Now, I do set a fictional character in the course of that story who is actually representing historical thought and opinion. That is to make the storyline move faster. Now, to answer your question, why all my books are historical, let me say When the Vulture Descends is not a historical work of historical fiction because it is about the communist takeover of India. When the Vulture Descends is the story of an Indian politician who is firmly convinced that democracy has failed in India in tackling the problems of poverty, hunger, illiteracy, nepotism, corruption, social disorder, and he thinks that only communism can succeed in India. The Wheel of Destiny is a novel that delves into the mysteries and causes of the Great War and how misguided patriotism and chauvinistic fervor propelled Europe into the vortex of disaster. Deep down, what touches the reader's heart in this book is the monumental struggle waged by some characters who are pitted against zealots controlling vast armies. Now, there was this crying need in Germany to declare war on France and defeat it within 6 weeks. Somehow the whole nation was geared in that direction. And the German generals had drawn up a secret memorandum, the great memorandum they called it, the Schlieffen Plan, which talked of a great wheeling movement through Belgium that would encircle Paris from the right. Now, what struck me in the course of this research was that whatever the problem may erupt in Europe in future, the answer would be the same from the German nation, that they would declare war on France and invade France. Now, this is one of the most difficult things to explain because ultimately the problem came up in the Balkans and yet Germany invaded France. The plan was that in 6 weeks they'll conquer France and then move east to face the Russian army. And the genesis of that was the German generals realized that Russia moves slowly and it will take 6 weeks for the Russian army to mobilize. So the whole thing was geared that they thought they will fight a short war, defeat France, defeat Russia, control Europe, and then declare themselves the greatest power in the world. The message for upcoming writers is only this, that if you are writing, remember it's a very lonely profession. You will have to stick it. And don't seek success straight away. Keep writing, keep moving along, and seek out an editor or a publisher who has faith in you. And essentially, at the end of the day, it's sheer luck.